Hello everyone and welcome to a new tutorial. Today we will be creating the Nova Bomb from Destiny. We'll cover all variations: gravity, duplicating on impact, damage over time, and seeking enemies. After watching this, you can alter the visuals of your ability to better fit your game. I'm going to start by setting up the scene. We will add a plane to our level to act as our ground, reset its position to 0, scale it up a bit so it fills more space, then create a new material using the default checkered texture that comes with Unity and give it to our plane. I will also increase its tiling so that it looks a bit more pleasing. Cool! Create a sphere and call it player and give it the player tag. Reset its location and on the y-axis set it to 0.5 so that it is just above the ground. I'm going to import a very simple first-person controller I created and assign it to my player sphere. If you already have a player controller, you don't have to do this. The script will be available to download in the description down below. Give our player sphere a rigid body with use gravity enabled. Now I'm going to make the main camera a child of our player and reset its Z value so that it's inside our player sphere. Click play and test it out. Our first-person controller is working as intended. If you press left click on your mouse, it will give you an error because we have yet to create our Nova Bomb, and so let's do that. Let's set up our visuals. I'm going to spend way more time than I usually do on my tutorials making this look more presentable. Create an empty game object and call it Nova Bomb. Give it a sphere collider and a rigid body. Uncheck use gravity and check its trigger. Create a new particle system and call it loop. Set its duration and lifetime to 3 seconds. Start speed to 0.01 and down under start color enable random between 2 colors and set the colors you want. I'm going with a pink with alpha of 150 and a light pink with alpha of 150. Go to shape and change it to sphere and radius to 0.5. Set our loop to be a child of the Nova Bomb game object and reset its position and rotation. Down under our render settings, I'm going to change the render mode to mesh and use a sphere mesh. Render alignment to velocity and material to the default line material that comes with Unity. Enable color over lifetime. Set an alpha keyframe at the middle, then change the start and end keyframes values to 0. For the color keyframe, I will move it to the center and select a purple. Now they're fading quite nicely. Enable size over lifetime and choose the flat line. Double click in the middle of the line and lower it just a bit. This will give the particles a pulsating effect. Increase the rate over time to whatever you wish. I like it, it's like a stylized version of the Nova Bomb. Duplicate the loop and rename these trails. Nova Bomb usually leaves a trail and ours does not, so we have to set the simulation speed to 5 and simulation space to world. And if you ask why not do this to the loop particle, well, you can, but this way we can customize the visuals of our particles even more. Change the size over lifetime to a ramp going down. Under the emission, remove rate over time and enable rate over distance. Play around with the values until you have something you like. I think 2 works best for me. After you're done playing with it, reset its position. Create a new particle system and name it Spawn. This will be more of a camera effect than anything else. Set the duration and lifetime to 1 and start speed to 0. For emission, remove the rate over time and enable burst particle of 1. On the shape settings, set them to the minimum so that it always spawns on the center. Import this texture. On its settings, change alpha source to from grayscale and check alpha is transparency. The download link will be in the description down below. Create a new unlit particle material and assign our texture to it. Drag our new material onto the spawn particle system. Change its size to 5 and enable size over lifetime with a ramp going up. Enable color over lifetime and make it fade out. Change the start color to whatever you wish. Increase the simulation speed to 2 and disable looping. Go down to our render settings and for max particle size increase it to 5. Awesome, now we have this kind of shockwave. Set the spawn game object parent to be our Nova Bomb and reset its position and rotation. Drag the Nova Bomb game object into our project folder to create a prefab and delete it from our scene. We can assign our Nova Bomb prefab in our character controller and hit play. That's not bad. I'm going to increase the simulation speed of our spawn particle to 3. Duplicate our loop particle system and move it to the side so we can work on it. Remove the trial particle system and rename it Impact. Change the start speed to 1. Under emission, remove the ramp over time and add a burst of 30 particles. Go to size over lifetime and choose a ramp going down. I'm going to change the duration, lifetime and simulation speed to 2 so that it's a bit faster. Cool. For our color over lifetime, just remove the first alpha keyframe. Reset its position and disable looping as well as playing awake. Now, if you take a look at your Nova Bomb collider, it's a bit too small. So instead of increasing its radius, I will lower the size of our particles to better fit it. So for loop's shape radius, I will lower it to 0.2 and start size to 0.7. We gotta fix the trail too. Set the radius to 0.2 and start size to 0.5. Alright, that's fine. Reset its position. I mean, like I said before, I could have just increased the radius, but I want my Nova Bomb to be pretty tiny. Duplicate our loop particle system and remove the trail, then move it to the side and rename it Vortex. Change its duration and lifetime to 1. And for size over lifetime, choose the ramp going up. For color over lifetime, we will make it very transparent, so set the alpha to 25. Cool. Under our shape settings, set the radius to the minimum and lastly, increase the start size to 2. Duplicate our vortex, make it a child of it and rename it Race. Then move it to the side so we can work on it better. Go down to render settings and change the mesh to capsule and make sure the render alignment is set to velocity. Back up here, enable 3D start size and set its X and Z values to something low and Y value to something a bit higher. Now we have this cool race, but some of them have a messed up rotation. No problem, just enable start 3D rotation and set its X value to 90. I'm actually going to make them even thinner, so 0.003. Yeah, that's better. Increase the start speed to 0.5 and simulation speed to 3, then reset our particles position. Disable the Vortex game object and create a new empty game object. Call this target acquisition and give it to a sphere collider with its trigger checked. This trigger will be in charge of assigning our possible target to seek. Now create 2 new scripts, Nova Bomb for Nova Bomb game object and Nova Target Acquisition for our Target Acquisition game object. Okay, all done here. Let's open up our scripts and begin coding. Alright, we will begin by setting up some variables. First one will be a prefab we can assign in the inspector. This is the object that will be created upon impact if we have enabled duplicating on impact. And then a bunch of floats. We will go over what they do as we use them. By the way, if you don't like how this looks, then you can do something like this instead. Okay, for private variables, we will first create a boolean that will help us stop some of our loops, then our rigid body, and all our particle systems. We also need a transfer to chase when we have enabled seek. Our target acquisition we have just created, and a private float that will act as a timer for our damage over time. Under start, we need to reference our private variables, so first will be our rigid body. As soon as this object is created, we will add a force to it. Find our particle systems as well as our target acquisition game object. Now, if we have set our seek force to be higher than 0, we need to unparent our target acquisition game object. Why, you ask? We want to use untriggered events on this script, but if we have a child that also has a trigger, then it will cause unwanted event calls, so we unparent it. If we have not enabled seeking, we just disable it. Under update, we check if we have enabled seeking by choosing a value higher than 0. The target acquisition won't be our child, so its transform position will not be the same as our Nova Bomb. We need to fix this by setting its position to be the Nova Bomb's position. If we are dead and our vortex duration is bigger than 0, then we lower the vortex duration and damage timer. If our damage timer is smaller than 0, then we create a new function called AoE damage and add it inside our if statement. Under our new AoE damage function, the first thing we have to do is set the damage timer so that it does not loop forever. We use physics over life sphere to get all the possible enemies in a radius, and then we do a for each loop to damage all of them. I can't really show you how to do this part because chances are your enemy health script might be different than mine, but here is an example how I will go about it. Alright, now up here, if the vortex duration is smaller than 0, then we need to destroy ourselves. We will begin by checking if we still have the vortex particle system variable assigned, and if we do, then we unparent this particle system and stop it so that it fades away. Then we destroy the vortex game object and our Nova Bomb game object. Mind you, this is only being called if we have the vortex assigned up here. Oh, whoops. Okay, we are always assigning it at the start. That's not right. We need to do a quick check. So if our vortex duration is bigger than 0, then we assign it. Alright, that's cool. Down here, if it is not dead, we need to lower its lifetime. If the lifetime is lower than 0, then we call the AoE damage function. And also create a new function called impact. Under our new impact function, the first thing we will do is check if we have enabled shatter amount by assigning a value higher than 0. And we have also assigned the Shatter Nova prefab. If all of this is true, then we do a little loop to create these prefabs. Here we are creating a random rotation. This rotation is always facing upwards. For spawn position, we are spawning it above the Nova Bomb to avoid our newly created Shattered Nova Bombs to collide with whatever our Nova Bomb collided with. We also have a Shattered Offset variable we can change in the inspector. You'll see what this does in a second. Alright, cool, so now we have to check if we have enabled Vortex by assigning a value higher than 0 to our Vortex duration. If this is true, then we enable our Vortex particle system. If this is not true, we just destroy the Nova Bomb using a delay for particles to fade away. We also need to play our impact particle system. Stop our loop, set the boolean is dead to true, and stop our rigid body by setting its velocity to 0, and finally destroying the target acquisition game object. Next, we'll do our Nova Bomb's movement. Since we are using a rigid body, we need to do all of this movement inside fix update. Why, you ask? Fix update is synchronized with Unity's physics engine, so if you're adding force or changing the rigid body velocity inside update, then you will encounter shaking and jiggling. That being said, we will begin by checking if we are not dead. And if we have a target, then we calculate the direction up to this target and add a force to our rigid body using the seek force variable. However, if we do not have a target and we have assigned a gravity by choosing a value higher than 0. We add a force to our rigid body downwards using our gravity force variable. Okay, almost there guys. Last thing we will do in this script is our trigger enter event. We need to do a few checks. If this is not dead and the tag is not equals to player or Nova Bomb, then we call our impact and AoE functions. Open up our Nova target acquisition script, and this one is pretty short. We will be using only 2 variables. Under update, we assign our Nova Bomb script and then create an onTrigger event that will check if the tag is equals to enemy, and also if our Nova Bomb does not already have an enemy. Then we move on to checking if we have enabled our proximity check by setting it to be higher than 0. We store in a temporary variable the distance between our Nova Bomb and our potential target. Create a new function called assignTarget and add it inside our if statement and also out here. Cool, down below we will set the target to... we need to take in a parameter of type transform, and then up here we will use whatever our trigger collided with. Okay, now we will assign the Nova Bomb target. Create a temporary variable called magnitude. This will be the rigid's body current velocity, then another temporary variable that will be the direction towards our target. We reset the velocity of a rigid body before adding a force towards the target using the velocity of a rigid body for a smooth transition. Cool. Lastly, we will check our first-person controller, and if you have ever coded a bullet or a gun for a first-person controller, then this might look very familiar. All I'm doing here is checking if we press left click inside our update, and down here we create our Nova Bomb prefab in front of the camera using the camera's rotation. Finish coding. Oof, alright. Open up our Nova Bomb prefab and let's set some values real quick. Lifetime to 10, damage radius to 1, spawn force to 10, destroy delay to leave it at 0 so you can see what it does. Gravity force to 0.1 and the rest at 0 for now. Hit play and let's check it out. You can see it's disappearing right away upon impact, right? Set the destroy delay to 2 and it should be fine now. Let's check out our vortex. So set the vortex duration to 5. It's working nicely. I just don't like that lingering effect in the center, and I think that's our looping particle system. So let's open up our prefab and for our loop, increase its simulation speed to 5. Let's go check it out now. Okay, perfect. In your Nova Bomb prefab, select all objects and set their tag to Nova Bomb. And for our Sig Force, I'm going to set it to 5 for now. And we'll remove the vortex. We need some enemies for Nova Bomb to chase, so create a sphere and rename it enemy. Give it the enemy tag and a rigid body with use gravity unchecked. I will move it to the ground and duplicate it twice and hit play. Working as intended. It's seeking the enemies too fast, so I will lower the Sig Force to maybe like 3. Still too fast. Let's go for 2. Now that's more like it. I will create an empty game object and call it enemies, then make all my enemies a child of this game object because I don't like crowded hierarchies. Then I'll duplicate my enemies so I have more targets. Duplicate our Nova Bomb prefab and call this Shattered Nova Bomb. And for this prefab, you can have whatever values you like. Just make sure you don't set the shatter amount to anything, because otherwise it will create Nova Bombs forever upon impact, and ever and ever and ever. So select our Nova Bomb prefab and change the shatter amount to 3 for now. And shatter offset to just leave it as 0 and assign our newly created prefab here. Hit play and let's test it out. Okay, up here you can see that we actually did create the Shattered Nova Bombs, but they exploded right away. This is because as soon as they spawn, they are colliding with whatever our Nova Bomb impacted with. To fix this, just set the shatter offset to 2 and hit play. Now you can see they are spawning above the Nova Bomb. That's what we want. 2 is way too high though, so I will set it to 0.5. That looks much better. Now if we target an enemy, they are still exploding right away. That's when our proximity value comes in. Set this to 2 for both our prefabs and hit play. Okay, they are still spawning too close to our enemy, so I will set the shatter offset to 1. Awesome, it's all working as intended, guys. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. I will try my best to answer them. Now go play with the values and customize it to look however you like. Here are a few examples. Go crazy with it. Cool, please subscribe. I have a few abilities in mind to recreate in Unity, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching and have a good one. Bye bye.